It is the ultimate punishment reserved for only the worst crimes committed in our state. The death penalty is the law of the land, but that sentence is imposed right now out of sight, except for a few select witnesses.
Death row looks very different, depending on where you are in the world. In some countries, prisoners spend decades in tiny, quiet cells, waiting for their fate. In others, executions happen soon after sentencing, leaving almost no time to adjust. Some inmates live completely alone, while others find small ways to connect with guards or fellow prisoners. The routines, meals, and even access to exercise can change from country to country. Behind these walls, there are stories of fear, hope, and sometimes unexpected moments of kindness. Many nations are slowly moving toward abolishing the death penalty, but change comes slowly.
George Pod 2, Browning Unit. The sign says condemned row, but it's better known as death row. All the men here committing crimes so terrible, the state has decided they need to die.
What really happens to people on death row across the globe? Join us if you dare to see. Death row cells and confinement. Death row does not look the same everywhere. The space itself of the cells, its solitude, and the amount of light that gets in often reflects how a country thinks about punishment. In the United States, death row usually means single-person cells. In California's famous San Quentin State Prison, inmates are kept in narrow concrete rooms with a solid door, a small window, and little personal space. Texas's Pulaski unit, where many executions take place, is even more controlled. Prisoners spend most of their day alone, with movement carefully scheduled. The design is meant to prevent contact, reduce risk, and keep routines predictable. Japan has a more solemn approach to this. Death row cells are known for their extreme quiet. At the Tokyo Detention House, for example, inmates are kept in small, spotless rooms with minimal furniture. Windows allow light, but views are limited. There's only so much you can see before the lights go out. Most importantly, silence is strictly enforced. So, in a cell of inmates counting time, a pin drop could actually sound like thunder. Another perk of the Japan system is that prisoners are not told their execution date in advance. Therefore, the calm appearance of the cell hides a deep uncertainty, making the space feel peaceful on the surface, but tense underneath. In Thailand, death row inmates are often held in older prisons like Bangkwang Central Prison, sometimes called the Bangkok Hilton. Cells may be shared, crowded, and warm. Unlike the isolation seen in the US and Japan, inmates here are often surrounded by others, which brings noise, movement, and constant human presence. Good for distraction and getting the mind off the blank future. Interestingly, in China, details and routines are harder to confirm. Death row facilities are not open to the public, and executions are handled quickly after sentencing. The much we know is that cells are believed to be highly controlled. One thing is clear, though. Death row cells are meant to manipulate their inmates through silence, isolation, or a simple routine, playing on time and even sanity. You won't believe how relevant routine is in death row systems. Let's get to it. A day in the life of an inmate. Life on death row is built around routine. The days are carefully planned, repeated again and again, often with very little variation. Across countries, these routines shape how prisoners experience time. In the United States, a typical day on death row begins early. Lights come on around dawn. Inmates receive meals through a slot in the door. Breakfast is simple and eaten alone. Movement is limited and scheduled. Some prisoners are allowed short periods outside their cells for exercise, usually in small, enclosed yards. Reading, writing letters, or watching limited television fills the rest of the day. At San Quentin Prison in California, death row inmates spend most hours inside their cells. Human contact is brief and controlled. Guards perform regular checks. Medical visits and legal meetings are rare breaks in the routine. Daily life is even more quiet and structured in Japan. Prisoners wake, eat, and sleep at set times. Talking is not allowed unless permission is given. Radios are sometimes provided, but television access is limited. Reading materials are carefully selected. Exercise happens alone, usually for a short time, in silence. One unusual detail of Japan's system is that prisoners are expected to keep their cell neat at all times. Beds are folded, belongings are arranged precisely. The order of the space is considered part of discipline. Tough, right? As for Saudi Arabia, daily life on death row takes place within strict prison rules shaped by religious practice. Prayer times structure the day. Inmates may share space with others who are also awaiting sentences. Meals follow prison schedules, and religious texts are commonly available. Family visits may occur, but they are limited and closely supervised. Nusa Kambangan is a prison in Indonesia where routines can vary depending on security level. Some death row inmates participate in light prison work or religious study. Others spend most of their time inside shared cells. Access to outdoor areas is limited and depends on behavior and prison policy. Across these systems, the day is not marked by events but by patterns. Wake, eat, wait, sleep, repeat. The sameness makes days blur into each other, and if every day looked exactly the same, how long do you think it would take before time itself started to feel different? Up next is the world's single most effective detention technique. You've likely heard it before. Solitary confinement. In many parts of the world, death row is closely tied to solitary confinement. This means prisoners spend most, and sometimes all, of their day alone in a small space with very little human contact. The first country under our observation is the United States, with its very common solitary confinement. In states like Texas and Arizona, inmates may spend 22 to 24 hours a day inside their cells. Meals are passed through a slot in the door. Exercise, if allowed, happens alone in a small concrete yard. Conversations with other inmates are usually not permitted. For years at a time, the only regular voices come from guards during checks. How crazy is that? As for Japan, solitary confinement is strict and continuous. Death row inmates are kept alone at all times. They do not see or speak to other prisoners. Even exercise happens individually. Silence is enforced, and communication is limited to brief exchanges with prison staff. This isolation can last for many years, as executions are rare and unpredictable, just like USA, but with a touch of Japanese. Thankfully, it's lighter in Iran. Death row inmates are often kept separate from the general prison population. Some are held alone, but others share space with a small number of prisoners facing similar sentences. In facilities like Evan Prison, access to the outside world is tightly controlled. Visits and phone calls may be reduced as the execution date approaches. Doctors and researchers have studied long-term isolation that occur in solitary confinements and found that it can affect sleep, memory, and emotional balance. Prisoners may struggle to focus or feel connected to time. Without regular conversation, even simple thoughts can feel heavier. It's like the silent treatment, but with more isolation and deeper depression. Want to know what happens to inmates who wait a long time for their executions? Stay with us. The death row phenomenon. In the United States, experts use a specific phrase to describe what happens to many prisoners after years on death row. It is called the death row phenomenon. This term refers to the emotional and mental changes that can develop when someone lives for a long time under the constant expectation of execution. The United States has one of the longest average death row waiting periods in the world. Many inmates spend decades under sentence of death, often in near total isolation. During this time, prisoners know their punishment has been decided, but they do not know when it will happen. This fear of the known and unknown creates a unique and terrifying kind of stress. Doctors and psychologists studying U.S. death row inmates have observed common patterns. Some prisoners experience deep anxiety, trouble sleeping, or difficulty concentrating. Others lose interest in daily activities or stop communicating as much as they once did. Time can begin to feel distorted, with days blending together. One frequently discussed case is Albert Woodfox, who spent over 40 years in solitary confinement, much of it under extreme conditions. Although his sentence was later overturned, his experience brought national attention to the long-term effects of isolation and waiting. Legal experts and medical professionals used his case to explain how prolonged confinement can change a person's sense of self. American courts have debated whether the death row phenomenon should affect sentencing or execution decisions. Some judges have acknowledged the mental strain caused by long waits, while others argue that the legal process itself causes the delays, so it was not a part of the punishment. Unlike physical punishment, the death row phenomenon works quietly. There are no visible marks, but sometimes the simplest of punishments prove to be the most devastating. At this point, you might wonder just how many prisoners are marking years by court dates, hoping for an appeal and waiting for their last days. We've talked about time and pattern. Now let's bring up something so basic and stunning in the death row system: more than just the last meal. Food on death row is often misunderstood. Many people think only about the final meal, but for prisoners, daily food plays a much larger role in how life feels while waiting. In the United States, death row inmates usually eat the same meals as the rest of the prison, though portions may be served inside the cell. Breakfast might include cereal, bread, or eggs. Lunch and dinner often consist of simple items like rice, beans, vegetables, or meat. Meals arrive on a strict schedule, delivered through a small opening in the door. For many prisoners, food becomes a way to mark time. Breakfast means morning. Dinner means another day has passed. Some inmates keep notes about meals in journals, not because the food is special, but because it brings clarity to long, quiet days. In some U.S. states, inmates can buy snacks from a prison store if they have money. Items like instant noodles, cookies, or coffee mixes become small comforts. These treats are saved, traded, or eaten slowly to stretch moments of pleasure. In Japan, food on death row is more controlled and symbolic. Meals are carefully prepared and nutritionally balanced. Prisoners usually eat traditional Japanese food, such as rice, soup, vegetables, and fish. Portions are modest, and meals are eaten alone in silence. Unlike in the U.S., Japanese death row inmates do not have access to snack stores. There are no extra treats or personal choices. The simplicity of the meals matches the overall order of the system. Prisoners are expected to finish their food neatly, and waste is discouraged. One detail often noted by former prisoners and observers is that food can reflect mood. On ordinary days, meals follow the usual pattern. On the day of execution, however, Japanese inmates are sometimes offered a final meal of their choosing, which can include favorite childhood dishes or traditional comfort foods. What gets more devastating than that? Singapore is an interesting country in this regard. The death penalty is carried out under one of the most orderly and tightly regulated justice systems in the world. Everything surrounding death row follows clear rules, and that includes the tradition of the final meal. At Changi Prison, where executions take place, death row inmates live under strict routine and close supervision. When an execution date is confirmed, the prisoner is informed only a short time in advance. This moment marks a shift in how the prison prepares for the final days. One long-standing practice in Singapore is allowing the prisoner to request a last meal. Unlike popular stories of oversized feasts, these meals are usually simple and realistic. Requests must come from regular food options that can be prepared safely within the prison. Favorite local dishes, such as rice-based meals or noodles, are commonly chosen. The meal is prepared carefully and served privately. There is no ceremony and no audience. Prison staff are trained to keep interactions respectful but minimal. Religious considerations are also taken seriously. If a prisoner follows a specific faith, food rules connected to that belief are respected. Halal meals are provided for Muslim inmates, and other dietary needs may be honored when possible. Spiritual advisors are usually allowed to visit before the execution, and the meal may come after such a visit. The last meal in Singapore is not widely discussed in public records. Details are rarely released, and families often keep this information private. This quiet approach reflects the country's broader attitude toward capital punishment, stern and private, a sort of intimate event that belongs to the inmate and his family alone. While the final meal may seem like a nice little perk in the death row to encourage inmates, even the most memorable dishes could become reminders. In other words, food could be joy, a way to forget anxiety and grief. It could also be a marker, counting the days till the end. With that, we bring you to 3 intriguing events that made impact on the death row system. Let's get to it. 3 unusual death row facts. Did you know that in Japan, prisoners learn their fate on the same day? Inmates are not told their execution date in advance. So prisoners wake up each morning not knowing whether it will be an ordinary day or their last. They are informed only a few hours beforehand. This rule is meant to prevent long-term fear, but it also creates constant uncertainty. Imagine following the same routine, cleaning cells, eating meals, reading, without any countdown. Out of nowhere, you're told that you have only a few hours more. Families are notified only after the execution has taken place. Saudi Arabia, religious timing shapes death row. Life in Saudi Arabia, religion plays a major role in final moments. Daily schedules are organized around prayer times, which structure the day from morning to night. Religious texts are widely available, and many prisoners spend much of their time reading or reflecting. Another notable detail is that executions are not carried out during certain religious periods. Timing matters greatly, and sentences may be delayed to respect religious calendars. This means death row inmates can experience long pauses where nothing changes, followed by sudden activity when decisions are finalized. So it's good, but it can be bad as well. China has shorter death rows. Once a sentence is confirmed, executions often happen quickly, sometimes within weeks or months. Because of this, death row is not always a long-term place. Another unusual fact is that some sentences are issued with a 2-year suspension, during which good behavior can lead to a reduced sentence. This system means some prisoners enter death row with a chance, however small, that their sentence may change. Which do you think is a lesser evil, though? Would you rather know or live in suspense? You can leave your answers in the comments as we dive into a spiritual aspect of this topic. Religion and death row. For many prisoners, faith becomes a quiet companion while waiting on death row. Across different countries, access to religious guidance and practices varies, shaping how inmates cope with their sentence. In Saudi Arabia, religion is central to daily life on death row. Prisoners follow strict prayer schedules, and reading the Quran is common. Chaplains or religious counselors visit regularly, offering guidance and comfort. For many, these moments provide structure and a sense of calm in a highly controlled environment. In Japan, Buddhist and Shinto practices are available, though visits from spiritual advisors are brief and highly regulated. Some inmates meditate quietly in their cells or participate in small rituals. Faith helps them face uncertainty, since execution dates are not announced in advance. As for India, prisoners can meet religious leaders and receive guidance according to their faith. Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, and Christian inmates may perform prayers, rituals, or fasting under supervision. These activities often bring relief and a sense of dignity, even inside the strict confines of prison. Indonesia also endorses faith and religiosity on death rows. On Nusa Kambangan Island, religious study and prayer are part of daily routines. Islamic teachings often structure the day for Muslim inmates, and chaplains are allowed to provide support. Religious rituals can be comforting, helping prisoners feel a connection to something larger than the prison walls. Across these systems, spiritual practices provide a rare outlet. They can shape hope, reflection, or acceptance, offering mental and emotional relief. Keep watching for more. 3 men on death row. Albert Woodfox became one of the most talked about prisoners in the United States, not because of what happened before his sentence, but because of what happened during it. Woodfox was placed in solitary confinement at a young age and spent more than 40 years in near total isolation. For decades, his world was the 4 walls of a cell. It didn't shrink him, though. Woodfox taught himself through reading, wrote hundreds of letters, and became a voice for change inside prison walls. He organized classes on history and civil rights for other inmates. Reporters, human rights groups, and filmmakers took interest in his life, turning his story into books and documentaries. Woodfox's long wait, year after year, showed how death row can transform not just the schedule of a day, but the meaning of a life in a positive way. In India, the case of Yaqub Memon drew national attention, not only for the crime itself, but for the long and complex legal journey that followed. Memon was convicted in connection with a serious terrorist attack, and his sentencing set off years of appeals, petitions for mercy, and legal debates. While his lawyers fought in court after court, Memon continued to wait. Years passed. Supporters and critics of the death penalty watched closely as each hearing, review, and document extended his time under sentence. For many Indians, the case became a way to discuss the justice system. Even as debates continued, life on death row for Memon was marked by waiting, reflection, and endless legal steps. Not the best of stories, but it shows just how much a little ray of hope can do. Hiroshi Meiwei in Japan became known as the self-harm website killer, a name connected to the way he committed his crime. Meiwei spent years in a quiet, orderly cell, following the routines of daily life. Then, one morning, he learned that his execution would take place later that same day. The suddenness of this knowledge was part of a system designed to prevent anxiety. But for many observers, it raised profound questions about how a person lives when the end arrives without warning. It raised questions to the fairness of the legal system. Surely, death was enough. wasn't it? While we're wondering, you'll definitely want to watch the next part of our video. Stay tuned. Pregnant women on death row. Life on death row can be especially challenging for women. When a prisoner is pregnant, the rules and routines bend. Pregnancy introduces new responsibilities and protections, even within a system built for punishment and control. Pregnant inmates are usually moved to special housing or units designed to provide medical care. Meals are adjusted to meet nutritional needs, and routine checkups with doctors or midwives become part of the daily schedule. Guards and prison staff often take extra precautions to ensure safety, such as monitoring activity and providing access to prenatal vitamins or supplements. Some prisons allow women to give birth inside the facility, often in a small medical ward with trained staff present. In rare cases, infants may stay with their mothers for a limited period after birth, sometimes only weeks or months, before being placed with family or in foster care. This arrangement is meant to balance the mother's right to care for her child with the rules of security and confinement. Daily life for pregnant women on death row is still heavily controlled. Exercise is often restricted to gentle movement recommended by medical staff. Privacy is limited, as guards must ensure the safety of both mother and child. Emotional support may come from counselors, chaplains, or other prisoners, helping mothers navigate the tension between motherhood and confinement. Even beyond pregnancy, women on death row often experience unique treatment compared to male inmates. Their routines may include separate recreation times, different cell arrangements, or access to programs designed to support mental health and coping. Some prisons provide resources for education, skill building, or spiritual reflection, recognizing that women's experiences can be distinct from men's in ways that affect how they manage long waits and isolation. These adjustments do not remove the harsh realities of death row, but they show that even in strict and controlled environments, systems make allowances for life, vulnerability, and the challenges of being pregnant behind bars. If you think that's a relief, wait till you see the next section of our video. Life after death row. Anthony Charles Graves was only 26 years old when he was sent to death row, convicted of a crime he didn't commit. For 18 years, he lived in a small cell under constant watch, with the knowledge that his life could end at any moment. Every day was the same: wake, eat, sleep, repeat. Yet Anthony never gave up. He wrote letters, studied the law, and hoped that one day the truth would be revealed. Finally, in 2010, after years of legal appeals and the discovery of new evidence, his conviction was overturned. He walked out of the prison gates as a free man, leaving behind nearly 2 decades of confinement. Freedom was not instant comfort. The world outside had moved on without him. Streets, technology, even ordinary choices felt unfamiliar. Anthony described walking down the street and realizing he had to learn how to navigate life all over again. Everyday things were suddenly new skills he had never practiced, but he also carried a powerful sense of purpose. He founded educational scholarships and began speaking publicly about his experience, helping other prisoners, and advocating for justice reform. Each new step was both thrilling and daunting, a chance to reclaim the years that had been stolen. Anthony was given a second chance, and it was one he lived gratefully for. Ernest Willis had a similar journey. Convicted of a crime he did not commit, he spent 17 years on death row, facing the same routines, the same uncertainty, and the same isolation. Eventually, investigators re-examined his case and found no credible evidence connecting him to the crime. When he was released, the outside world was overwhelming at first. Still, Ernest found ways to rebuild. He started his own business and embraced opportunities that had been denied for nearly 2 decades. For both men, life after death row was a mix of fear, hope, and new beginnings. The years spent waiting for execution could not be erased, but freedom offered a chance to live again. The world they returned to was unfamiliar, but it was theirs to explore. Keep viewing for an important frontier on this topic. Countries leaving death row behind. Over the past century, a growing number of nations have walked away from the death penalty entirely. In many of these places, death row no longer exists as a legal institution. In fact, once condemned, prisoners now receive different sentences. One of the earliest examples comes from Venezuela, which became part of the abolition movement in the 19th century. By 1864, Venezuela had removed capital punishment from its constitution, making it one of the first countries in the world to do so. This meant that people who might once have waited on death row were instead sentenced to imprisonment or other penalties. Venezuela's move was later followed by other nations in Latin America and Europe. Even Sierra Leone, where a law passed in 2021, formally ended the use of the death penalty. The parliament's vote led to the removal of capital punishment from the legal system, and judges were given discretion to impose longer prison terms or life sentences as alternatives. For those already on death row at the time, sentences were commuted, and years spent awaiting execution were factored into new terms. Zambia made a similar move very recently. Although the country had not carried out executions for decades, capital punishment remained on the books until 2023, when legislation abolished it entirely. All references to the death penalty were removed from criminal and military law, and the nation became a party to an international treaty aiming to end capital punishment worldwide. Under the new law, people once facing execution now face sentences such as life imprisonment, and their cases must be recalculated under updated rules. This trend is on the increase. Across the globe, a number of nations are choosing alternatives to death row. By the end of 2024, 113 countries had abolished the death penalty in law, and 145 had abolished it in law or practice. This means executions are no longer carried out, even if old laws still exist. Some countries have abolished the death penalty only for ordinary crimes while keeping it for very serious offenses, or they have introduced moratoriums where no executions take place, even if the punishment is still on the books. In other places, legal changes have commuted entire death row populations to life or long-term custody. Religious institutions have often played a subtle but influential role in these developments. By framing the debate around moral responsibility, human dignity, and the sanctity of life, faith communities have encouraged both lawmakers and the public to reconsider the ethical foundations of capital punishment. Clergy, theological scholars, and religious organizations have issued statements, hosted dialogues, and supported campaigns highlighting the tension between state-sanctioned killing and core spiritual teachings. In many instances, these efforts have amplified voices advocating clemency and humane treatment for those on death row, helping to shift societal attitudes toward alternatives to execution. In many abolitionist nations, the removal of the death penalty has reshaped their justice systems. Courts now focus on sentencing options other than execution, and prisons have adjusted to caring for long-term inmates without the looming end of a death sentence. As this shift spreads, fewer places rely on death row as part of their legal framework. Religious advocacy has also contributed to restorative approaches, emphasizing rehabilitation over retribution and fostering programs aimed at reconciliation between offenders, victims' families, and society. Over time, this moral engagement has helped integrate ethical considerations into legislative reforms, making the abolition of capital punishment not only a legal decision, but a reflection of evolving societal conscience. We can't ignore the fact that the removal of capital punishment is still a debatable fact on today's discussion table. Many believe capital punishments are necessary because they uphold the dignity of life and protect the world from crime while deterring others from breaking the law. Others have asked what justice would look like if death row disappeared from the world map. Some picture a utopia that reveres human essence. Others see a murky society full of unpunished crime. What's important is that legal systems are adopting it and gaining benefits from punishments that seek to reform and restore erring individuals, not deprive them of their right to live. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.